from the Mazda of Kent studios.
This is 100.7 WMMS.
Check out the all-new Mazda of Kent. MazdaofKent.com.
Time to give stuff away. Time to give stuff away.
I want to go see Yellow Card. They're celebrating 20 years of Ocean Avenue and bringing a handful of pals with them. Special guest Mayday Parade, Story of the Year, and This Wild Life. It's all going to go down in July at Blossom. Wednesday the 12th. Yellow Card and Company. LiveNation.com will have whatever info you need on the show, tickets and whatnot. Caller 10, you'll get this pair from me. Good luck. 216-578-1007 or 800-348-1007.
Fun fact, celebrity deaths, like testicles, sometimes come in threes. The Alan Cox Show
On 100.7
WMMS.
I guess you could make the case for... Somebody's trying to make the case for me that a bunch of celebrities died this weekend. And I was so focused on Richard Belzer that I wasn't sure if the other people were celebrity adjacent or if that was maybe unfair. But Richard Belzer died, a legendary comedian Richard Belzer, who was not on everyone's radar, but if he was, over the course of a long, long career, he was dynamite. He was 78. He'd been sick for a minute. He's lived in France for quite some time. You know, people say, if so-and-so happens in this country, I'm leaving. And he did it. He's like, I'm getting the hell out of here. But lived in New York for a long, long time. Were you guys into Belzer at all?
I mean, I knew him from, like, Evening at the Improv and stuff like that when I was a kid. And then his years on SVU. But I wasn't deep with him.
Yeah, he did radio for a minute in New York. I did talk radio there for a bit. He played the character that he played on a whole bunch. That was always the most interesting thing to me, is that the character he played on a bunch of different shows. There was a show in the early 90s called Homicide: Life on the Street. It's kind of a precursor to The Wire. It was set in Baltimore, and they had cast Richard Belzer as a detective on this show. And then he went to play him on Law and Order. Same character, different show. Played him on Law and Order on a bunch of different iterations of that, but also played that character in other shows. I remember him playing, the character's name was John Munch, a detective. He played him on an episode of The X-Files when Mulder and Scully. I think they were in Baltimore. They ran into him. He was in a ton of movies. He started out, I was always surprised that he wasn't on Saturday Night Live, because he started with that whole National Lampoon radio crew. So he started with like Chevy and Gilda Radner and all those people that would eventually go on to do Saturday Night Live. But he didn't. But he was 78. So for people who are familiar, I remember just growing up, for whatever reason, my mom was like a big Richard Belzer fan. And that was how, because he was very dry and acerbic, and he just kind of had this, very, very dry delivery. He famously got choked out by Hulk Hogan. He had a show in the 80s and had Hulk Hogan on. And the video's on YouTube. It's actually, if you've ever seen that video, it's pretty scary, actually, because he put him in a sleeper hold, and then Belzer just dropped, and you could see blood coming out of his head and the whole thing, and he got up, I guess had the wherewithal to throw it to a commercial. But he ended up suing Hulk Hogan and won some money. And that's how he bought his house in France, was with that settlement money. He's like, I'm getting the hell out of here.
Need to sue somebody.
Right.
Well, have you begun a list?
I mean, I can't really say who I want to sue before I sue them. I feel like that would,
you don't want to give them the heads up.
Then they're going to have that countersuit ready to go.
Well, also the thing with suing is, you're on the risk of sinking so much of your own money into the litigation of it, and you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, I think he sued Hulk Hogan for millions of dollars, and they settled on like $500,000. But that was enough to get him a place in the south of France. And so that's what he did. But he was in a bunch of movies. I remember him in Night Shift, one of my favorite movies. It was Ron Howard's movie with Michael Keaton and Henry Winkler. He was in Scarface, I think, doing like whatever that accent was in Scarface. But Richard Belzer had a very, very storied and varied career. Other comics would talk about how great he was. He was always nice to them, always very supportive of them. But people who are hitting me up, oh my God, all these celebrities dying. The other ones they threw at me, and I guess I say celebrity adjacent, but I don't know. Kelly Pickler's husband shot himself in the head.
That's crazy.
And the way that the way I read the story, it didn't sound like things were going that great to begin with, because the story was describing how cops had talked to her, and she said she couldn't get into his bedroom. Mm-hmm. And Kelly Pickler, you might recall, did she win American Idol?
No.
She was a country artist.
Second or third.
She was a country artist years ago on American Idol, like in those early seasons. And I just remember everybody kind of giving her a hard time because she still, before they glammed her up, she kind of had a real corn pone vibe to her.
And she was really playing into the ditzy thing.
Did she play into it, or I could never get a vibe on if that was the case or not?
I mean, it seemed like when she was on the show, I feel like she was, like, people making fun of her for being dumb.
She had a talk show for a while, didn't she?
She did. Kelly Pickler had a talk show, yeah. So her husband committed suicide in their house.
Oof.
And then Hayden Panettiere's brother died. Again, these are celeb adjacent. I know he was an actor, but I'd never heard of him. If you know Hayden Panettiere in the first place, I mean, she got famous doing something.
Heroes.
Heroes. There you go.
Save the cheerleader, save the world.
She was in...
But she was on a show Gwen watched. What was the Nashville? Was it Nashville? She was on some country show that Gwen was a big fan of years ago. Her brother is 28. He was an actor, and they're staying mum on how he died, but that always makes me think of suicide. She was on a TV show it was called Nashville. She was like the young, up-and-coming pop country star, and Connie Britton.
Yeah, I love Connie Britton.
Oh, she's foxy.
I love Connie Britton.
Connie Britton was the,
She'd been around a while.
She'd been around. She'd seen some things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never watched Heroes, but I remember Hayden Panettiere was from that.
Yeah, that was...
But she was always in the tabloids, too, because, like, any dude she was dating was, like, hitting her or something. So this poor girl, I don't know. Anyway.
She was on Bring It On All or Nothing, is what you're all forgetting. The one where they learn crumping.
Funniest thing, I'm not forgetting that.
You are forgetting it.
No.
What
it's
is
her rise to
crumping?
fame. It was like, because the original Bring It On was like the white school versus the black school and like the privileged versus underprivileged, right? And it's kind of a similar vibe in this one where she transfers to a new school and it's a lot of like urban people and they do a dance called crumping that is like battling kind of. And it's very cringy to watch. Like,
can you show us an example?
I cannot.
Crumping?
I cannot. You can Google it. I am not going to crump today.
Please don't crump.
Crump it up. Crump up the jam. Crump it up.
But they like ended up putting it in their like nationals routine.
Nice.
And all this stuff. Yeah.
I just remember what a scandal it was. This would have been pre-social media when Heroes was on TV, but I just remember at the time that Hayden Panettiere was dating Milo Ventimiglia, who was one of her co-hosts. He's the guy that got blown up on This Is Us, I think. It's another show my wife watched. But at the time when they were both on Heroes, she was 18 and he was 30.
Oh.
And they were making a big deal about that at the time. But in 07, 08, you just had the National Enquirer, right? You just had like the scandal rags. You didn't have social media. Maybe you had people on MySpace, but was anybody talking about that on MySpace? I don't know.
Because there was...
Probably not.
Because there was people on MySpace doing the exact same thing.
Right.
And worse.
A grooming network.
So she was also in Remember the Titans. She was the coach's daughter.
Oh, she was like young.
She was like 7. Like she was like screaming on the sidelines and like she was always trying to be like she was the little cute girl who was into football and like knew all the ins and outs of it and stuff. She was real young in that one.
That's a great movie though.
Hey, KJ.
Yes.
What's going on?
I'm sorry. Let me get try. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
What can I do for you?
I called because I had a Cleveland-related Richard Belzer story.
Hey.
he actually opened for Warren Zevon at the Palace Theater, and I'm going to say 1975. And so, just had a lot of cool things to say about Cleveland. And I had not, he was off my radar until I had seen him there. But the thing I'll never forget is the crowd, of course, started screaming, Warren Zevon, Warren Zevon. And he goes, they're screaming rock and roll and things like that, and being obnoxious. And he just yells at the heckler, hey, listen, I was just with Warren backstage, and I just blah, blah, blah. S to Z, and he's going to be out in the middle of a bit. So he was just great.
What year would that have been, KJ? Like 79, 80, around there?
No, I'm going to tell you 1975, maybe.
Oh, 75. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, way back. I was a student at the University of Akron.
Gotcha.
And we saw him there, yeah.
All right, well.
But he was really keen on Cleveland. It's not the best story I've ever heard, but, he definitely made his mark on Cleveland back then.
That was the time to see him. Okay, thank you, KJ. I guess Richard Belzer played the comedian in Scarface.
Another great night here at the Babylon, right? Okay. All right. We'll do another Graham you'll all be babbling on. Is that coke in your brow? You're just glad to see me. But my favorite Cuban of all time has to be Ricky Ricardo, right? Mr. Babalu himself. But he had the same problem for 10 years. Lucy, don't come down to the club.
Oh, boy. Yeah, the
Stand
bells.
up in movies is always the cringiest thing.
Just the lack of transitions.
Yeah.
My favorite Cuban. Like, what?
Well, some people don't do transitional material. I guess that guy didn't.
Tell us a little bit about your old friend George Carlin.
Yeah.
That was too bad, wasn't it? What a
Was it out
surprise!
of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still trying to get over Tim Russert.
Right.
And then George. The thing that, the first thing I thought of was George wanted it on his epitaph. He wanted it to say, geez, he was here just a minute ago.
But So, yeah, some people had asked me if I'd ever had Belzer on. I had him on one time when I was on in Pittsburgh, and he was promoting something. He wasn't in town to do stand-up. He was promoting something, and I don't even remember what that was. It would have been a television project or something. But, and I know Mark Maron has told this story. The only Belzer story that went around that I always thought was funny was Jimmy Miller, who is Dennis Miller's brother and like a big time. He manages a lot of comics, but the Miller boys are from Pittsburgh. And Maron told a story about how he had been way back in the day really just couldn't kind of get his footing, and he was trying to figure out, he couldn't find his comedic voice. And Jimmy Miller was in the backseat of the car, and he's like, how did your brother do it? And Jimmy Miller said, he's just doing Belzer. And that was a story that went on for a while. Maybe he had to be there. I don't know. Maybe he had to be in the backseat of that car. But, and his buddy Ice-T got for a day after Ice-T's birthday, which he has the same birthday as our own Bam Bam Bill Squire. Ice-T and Bill Squire have the same birthday. And he's real tight with Belzer because he did that Law and Order show for so long. But he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And obviously Belzer couldn't be there because he was ill and he was in France. And if you know anything about travel, ill and in France are two things that are going to make it very difficult for you to make an appointment.
I mean, if you're going to be ill, you might as well be ill in France.
Is that a better place to be ill than somewhere else?
I want to be ill in France. Like, at least I'm in France.
There's bad parts of France. You don't know what part he was in.
But I'm just saying, it sounds very elitist. Like, I caught the cold in France. Now I'm laid up with COVID.
It sounds elitist to say you're sick in France.
Yes.
Oh
France
no,
sounds
I'm so
elitist.
sick of traveling abroad. Last time I was in Paris, I got the COVID. Me and Bostwick will never be the same.
Do kids still sing There's a Place in France Where the Naked Ladies Dance? Is that
No.
still?
I don't even remember singing that.
You never
did.
sang that?
Big
oh,
time.
Come on.
I don't know what that is.
There's a place in France where the naked ladies dance. There's a
I remember
hole in the
I See
wall.
London,
Where men
I
can
See
see it
France.
Yeah, there's a hole in the wall where I can see it all.
But Pound Cake, he wasn't living on the coast. He was in a town called Buzol, which is like a couple hours from the ocean.
Even better.
In the middle of nowhere?
Yes, because it's like, I don't want to be amongst the touristy areas. That's not my vibe. I just want to go into, the weeds, into the woods of France, Just chill out, be low key. Even better, you got a place in France that no one knows about?
Yeah,
that's very elitist.
Clearly, that's what it's not elitist. I mean, he got some settlement money and he decided he wanted to have a house overseas, and
But just imagine how that sounds. All right, like say you have a house in France and you're telling your friends to come visit you. Like, Alan, I can't wait to go see you in France. Like, all right, well, just so you know, we're a couple hours out of the city. You might want to fly into Paris, but we don't want to hang around there. There's too many restaurants, too many tourists, too much poop on the streets. Come into my forest house in the middle of the woods.
Forest house.
Forest house.
Forest house anywhere.
There's a
sounds good.
witch who's putting little kids in a stove in there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just a couple hours out of the city. You don't want to deal with all that traffic. Does France have an Autobahn, or is that just Germany?
The Autobahn is in Germany, yes.
Okay, well, a lot of crazy traffic out there. Not the Autobahn. That's in Germany.
Wow. Well, listen. I can't wait for the next installment of Pound Cake's International Travel Guide, available soon in paperback. Looking forward to that. International. We're going to get to Perez Bilton on the way back. This got away from me. I have to take another break here, but there's plenty of hot celebrity goss, and we'll let him apprise you of it. If you want to text 35192, I got passes for you for the Cleveland Auto Show. That is ready to go off.